I used to suck at coding.
I've been working on coding for 6 hours, and I haven't even gotten one method done, and I feel so stupid.
That used to be me. All those sleepless nights, imposter syndrome, and general incompetence. Like, why does coding look like English but act like it's possessed? Why are there periods in the middle of sentences? Why do we separate things into objects and classes? That's just judgy. What on earth is a stack, and why is it always overflowing? And you miss one semicolon and your computer somehow throws a temper tantrum on a line that doesn't even exist. We've all been there, but now I stand before you today as a full-time software engineer because for me at least, coding has become a piece of cake, literally. Learning to code as a programmer is like learning to bake a cake as a chef. So in this video, we're gonna be baking this cake one step at a time, 5 steps total. You gotta follow them in order. Just like with coding, you can't skip steps. At the end, we'll decorate this cake, meaning you'll become an advanced programmer because you have access to so many tools that didn't even exist when I started to learn to code. So sit back, relax, take notes, and let's start with step number 1. Before you bake anything, you have to prep. A chef doesn't just start cracking eggs randomly. First, they check what ingredients they already have, then they hit the store for whatever's missing. If they need to buy flour, sugar, or like baking soda. It's the same thing when you're starting to code. You don't just open your laptop and start typing. First, you figure out what you know, what you want to learn, and prepare your path to get there. But here's where most people mess up when learning to code. They become surfers, not miners. A surfer scrolls through tutorials, watches 10 different YouTube videos, and convinces themselves they're learning. But they're just skimming the surface. A miner, on the other hand, digs deep. They ask questions like, what's the difference between an error and an exception? What does the keyword final actually mean in Java? What is a thread? What is an async function? These are the people who actually get ahead, because once you understand how these things work under the hood, you become adaptable to any language. Coding languages are like recipes. The ingredients might change, but if you understand the technique, you can make anything work. A good chef doesn't panic when they're out of baking soda. They improvise and maybe use baking powder instead. And they can do that because they have their fundamentals concrete. In terms of your fundamentals, if you're an absolute beginner, I always recommend starting with something like CS50, in which they teach you intro to programming using Scratch for free. They build your foundations without overwhelming you. From there, you need to choose your direction. Python is a fantastic beginner-friendly language. It's usually people's first language in university, plus it's used heavily in AI and machine learning, which is essential to know nowadays. If you want to get started with Python, I recommend you use Cody.tech. They give mini bite-sized lessons. It starts from your basics, and in each module, it gives you a lesson, quiz, and project so you understand it super well. If you ever get stuck, check out their AI assistant, which serves as a mini tutor for you, helping you solve the problem. The best part is they are 100% free, but if you want access to their premium features like unlimited AI queries, you can use the code on the screen right here for 20% off. Once you've gotten all your ingredients, once you've established all your coding basics, you need to start baking. That means cracking the eggs, mixing the flour, and actually putting the batter in the oven. Watching Gordon Ramsay videos all day does not make you a chef. And watching coding tutorials all day does not make you a coder. You have to roll up your sleeves and get messy. A lot of people fall into this trap of analysis paralysis, and I relate with this. You studied for so long and learned all the technical jargon coding words like polymorphism, asynchronous, inheritance, abstract classes, and it almost gets a little overwhelming because you realize no matter how much you learn, it's like an iceberg. There's just so much under the surface that you still don't know. And you feel like you're never ready to actually start coding. But in reality, the only way to break out of this trap is to start building simple projects. It's in the act of creating, no matter how small or basic, that you validate what you've been learning. And once you do that, things begin to click and you continue to snowball till you're able to build bigger and more complex things. In fact, I actually never formally learned Python in a classroom. In high school, I did AP Computer Science, in which I learned Java, but by the time I actually got to university, I didn't really know Python. In fact, it wasn't until I applied and signed up for this research lab position in which I was forced to create a Python project. The goal of the research was to implement genetic algorithms, machine learning, in a simulation to solve a resource allocation problem. And like I said before, a lot of machine learning is implemented in Python, so I had to learn it. I couldn't afford to have analysis paralysis. I couldn't afford to be stuck in documentation, tutorial hell, and just watching a bunch of YouTube videos. I had to roll up my sleeves, get to work, and start learning the fundamentals. But it was through that process that I learned so much. In fact, I can confidently say that within 3 weeks of working on this Python project, I learned more about Python than most people learned in a whole semester of college. So if you're actually serious about advancing yourself, there's this free GitHub repository right here. It's called Practical Tutorials Project-Based Learning. And it's so nice that in any coding language that you want, it gives you excellent project ideas with a tutorial. So if you want to learn Python, Java, JavaScript, there are projects for you to do. It's completely free. You just gotta start. So once you've rolled up your sleeves, started to bake, started to code, let's be real, your first few cakes are going to suck. In fact, one time I tried to make this red velvet cake and it ended up looking like red carpet with mold over it. Like, thank God I became a software engineer and not a chef. Otherwise you guys would be cooked. But for those learning to code, the process is very similar. You will fail. I remember nights staying up until 4 a.m. trying to debug an assignment, failing, sleeping for a few hours, and getting right back to it. Sometimes it took me days to fix a single bug. It felt like I was hitting a wall over and over again. But it's in that repetition, that cycle of trying, failing, learning, and trying again, where true mastery is built. There's a popular theory called the 10,000 hour rule. It says you need roughly 10,000 hours to truly master a skill. LeBron James wasn't born a great basketball player. He spent years perfecting his craft, dribbling, shooting, and passing. Mr. Beast, the second best YouTuber after me, spent so many years with no recognition, studying the YouTube algorithm, putting out videos, and constantly failing until he finally got it to work. For me, I graduated from Georgia Tech with 2 computer science degrees, a bachelor's and a master's degree, but when I started working my full-time software engineering job, it was a struggle. I didn't really have much JavaScript experience, no front-end experience at all, and I actually had to learn nearly everything on the job. And I used to get so stressed out about it, completing my coding tasks in time, that I would actually work until I fell asleep, and then once I got up, I would get right back to it. And it got so weird to the point that I would actually start dreaming in JavaScript. Like, can you imagine that? Trying to come up with a solution in your sleep, which I definitely don't encourage anyone to get into. But at the end of the day, I had to go through that. I had to go through my 10,000 hours. I had to burn a few cakes. And it's gotten me to the point where I am today. Right now, I feel like an expert in Java, JavaScript, React.js, and in Python. Things that used to take me 2 whole weeks to do, I can complete in 2 days. In terms of resources, if you're also trying to work on Python, there's Python Tutor. So when you're running your code, obviously you'll have a lot of variables and function calls, and sometimes it's really, really hard to visualize. But this tool, Python Tutor, does exactly that for free. It walks you through the code, the steps in which it operates in, and shows you exactly what is being called and where it's being called. So it makes it super easy to debug. And hopefully through this, your 10,000 hours will decrease and you should be able to fail a tad, just a tad bit less. So once you finally bake your cake and take it out of the oven, you don't slice it immediately. You let it sit, let it cool down till it's ready to serve. Similarly, after an intensive coding session, you need to step away. Burnout is real, like real. 12-hour coding sessions might sound impressive, but if you do that too often, you're gonna crash or crash out. But what's worse than burnout is when you struggle on a problem for a really long time, your mindset changes. Instead of being a problem solver, you become a quick coder. Instead of focusing on creating good solutions, you focus on, all right, what is the quickest way I can get all these test cases to pass? In fact, when I was mentioning before how I used to dream in JavaScript, that is not good or healthy in the long term. There were definitely parts of me that wanted to get that quick fix solution instead of being a good software engineer. So to solve this, you need to establish a healthy coding routine. Here's what I recommend. First step is to attempt the coding problem for at least an hour or 2. Step 2, if you fail, document all the steps that you took to solving the problem. Step 3 is step away from your laptop, touch grass, get some sunlight for at least 30 minutes. While you're on your walk, you might randomly find the efficient solution. In fact, some of the best coding solutions that I've come up with was when I was in the shower. Step 4, you come back and attempt a solution. Maybe spend 15 minutes on it, but if it's still a failure, like you still don't know what's going on, then reach out to someone who's a little more knowledgeable. Or even ChatGPT, or if you work at a company, ask a senior engineer and explain to them your approaches. That's why the documentation step was so important, and ask for them what their opinion is. This shows that you've done your homework, you've tried your best, but you're just capped in some limitation from the knowledge that you have. And through their additional perspective, you should be able to solve the coding problem while also also maintaining your learning and avoiding burnout. Once you've let the cake sit for a bit and you ensure that it's not burning out, now it's time to get very creative and start decorating. And in today's world, decorating means supercharging your workflow with AI. Just to be clear, these AI tools do not help you learn to code. Rather, if you already know how to code, they will make you super advanced. Especially if you followed the first 4 steps that I laid out. AI tools like warp.dev have literally saved me hours. I used to spend like 30 minutes setting up things with terminal, downloading dependencies, configuring everything. Now I can just speak in natural language in English, run commands, and it's done for me by this AI tool. And no, this isn't an ad. I just genuinely believe in using tools that make your life easier. Tools like Cursor can take a design of a front end and generate code in literal seconds. Tools like Copilot can take a simple comment and fill an entire function. And it is very, very important that you start using AI nowadays, because with the proliferation of AI, everyone is using AI to create so many multi-million-dollar projects. And if you don't use AI, it's almost like saying you'll bake a cake with a toy mini oven while everyone else uses Michelin-grade equipment. So AI is literally a way to level the playing field with the top developers out there. So once you've mastered the basics, start using AI. Well, I really hope that you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already. If you're interested in my absolutely free tech newsletter, link will be down below in the description. And if you're interested in what software engineers do on a day-to-day basis, you might like this video right here.